They towed my brother's hearse, so I buried their legacy. I was standing in the kitchen, adjusting my black tie in the reflection of the microwave door, when I heard my mother's scream. It wasn't a scream of grief. We'd been living with that for weeks. This was different. Pure, distilled disbelief. I rushed to the front window where Mom stood frozen, her hands pressed against her mouth. Outside, where the sleek black hearse containing my brother's flag-draped casket had been parked just 10 minutes earlier, there was nothing but an empty rectangle of pavement. "Where's Michael?" she whispered, using the same lost tone she'd used when the military chaplain had first appeared on our doorstep 6 weeks ago. "Where did they take him?" Through the curtains of the house across the street, I caught Mrs. Abernathy's pinched face watching us, phone pressed to her ear, her expression a grotesque mixture of vindication and faux concern. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was war. My name is Daniel Reeves. My brother was Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves, 3 tours in Afghanistan, Silver Star recipient, killed by an IED outside Kandahar 2 months ago. I'm the one who identified his body when it came home. I'm the one who arranged his funeral. I'm the funeral director who was supposed to bury him with dignity today. And I'm the one who's going to make Whispering Pines Homeowners Association pay for what they've done. The tow truck driver sounded genuinely horrified when I reached him by phone. "Look, man, I'm just doing what I was called for," he said, his voice strained. "The work order said unauthorized commercial vehicle violating HOA regulations. Nobody said anything about, 'Jesus Christ, there's a casket in here.'" "That's my brother," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. The rage had crystallized into something cold and precise. "He's a decorated war hero being buried today. I need you to bring him back, now." "I can't do that without authorization from whoever called it in. Sunrise Valley HOA. They've got paperwork I'd need canceled. I'm real sorry, but my hands are tied." I thanked him calmly, got the address of the impound lot, and hung up. My mother sat at the kitchen table, her face blank with shock. My father, already fragile from grief, was upstairs being comforted by my aunt. 30 guests, including several of Michael's fellow soldiers, would be arriving in less than an hour, expecting to join a procession to the veterans' cemetery. Instead, my brother's body was sitting in an impound lot because his hearse violated Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the Whispering Pines HOA regulations. No commercial vehicles may be parked within view of the street. I pulled out my phone and called Derek Wilson, current president of the Whispering Pines HOA and, not coincidentally, the owner of the largest real estate company in the county. "Daniel," he answered on the 3rd ring, his voice smooth with practiced sympathy. "I was just about to call you. There seems to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding. You towed my brother's hearse on the day of his funeral. Now that's not entirely accurate. The HOA has procedures in place. You towed a fallen soldier's casket because it violated your aesthetic guidelines." A pause. "I understand you're upset, Daniel, but rules exist for a reason. We've had multiple complaints about commercial vehicles being parked in residential areas. Your vehicle should have been kept at your place of business until the appropriate time. My place of business is 2 hours away. We brought Michael home one last time because that's what he wanted. It's in his will. Then you should have applied for a temporary exemption. There are channels for these things." I could almost see him, sitting in his glass-walled office overlooking the golf course, straightening his tie while he explained to the grieving brother why bureaucracy mattered more than basic human decency. "I want my brother's hearse returned. Immediately." Of course. Just a matter of paperwork. I'll have my assistant send over the impound release form. You'll need to pay the standard violation fee. Once payment clears, the vehicle can be released." "Payment," I repeated. "Standard procedure. $350 for the violation, plus $175 for the tow." "Oh, And there's a $95 processing fee. The cold rage inside me crystallized further. You're charging me $620 to release my dead brother's body after you illegally towed it on the day of his funeral? There's nothing illegal about enforcing our community's bylaws, Daniel. His voice hardened slightly. We've been more than patient with your family's situation. The memorial displays on your lawn, the constant stream of visitors, the American flags everywhere. It's disruptive to the community aesthetic. In that moment, I understood something fundamental about Derek Wilson and the HOA he represented. To them, my brother's death wasn't a tragedy. It was an inconvenience, a disruption to property values. Michael hadn't died defending his country. He'd damaged their investment portfolio. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Have everything ready. I hung up, took a deep breath, and made 3 calls. The first was to Captain James Mercer, Michael's commanding officer, who had flown in from Fort Bragg for the funeral. The second was to Kelly Oakes, a reporter for the local news station who had covered my brother's homecoming. The third was to every veteran in my contact list. Then I grabbed my camera. The Whispering Pines HOA office occupied a pristine white colonial on the edge of the neighborhood's private golf course. Its manicured hedges and gleaming windows projected the same message as the community's massive stone entrance: exclusivity, perfection, control. I hadn't expected the crowd that greeted me when I arrived. Word had spread faster than I'd anticipated. At least 30 veterans in uniform stood silently on the immaculate lawn, forming a path to the entrance. Captain Mercer, in his dress blues, nodded grimly as I approached. "These men and women served with your brother," he said quietly. Some came straight from the airport when they heard. A news van from Channel 7 was parked at the curb, Kelly Oakes and her cameraman already filming. When she spotted me, she hurried over. "Daniel, I'm so sorry about what's happened. We'd like to cover this if you're comfortable with it. People need to see this." "I'm counting on it," I replied, turning on my own camera. As our group approached the entrance, the HOA office door opened. Derek Wilson emerged, flanked by a security guard and a woman I recognized as Patricia Keller, the HOA's legal counsel. Wilson's practiced smile faltered when he saw the crowd, the uniforms, the cameras. "Daniel," he said, his voice artificially bright, "I see you've brought some friends. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "You towed my brother's hearse containing his body on the day of his funeral. I'm here to rectify your mistake." Wilson's smile tightened. "As I explained, there are procedures." "My brother gave his life for this country," I interrupted. "He died defending your freedom to create petty rules about where people can park. The least you can do is return his body, so we can bury him with the honor he deserves." Patricia Keller stepped forward, her voice clipped. "Mr. Reeves, while we sympathize with your loss, this theatrical display is unnecessary. If you'll step inside, we can resolve this matter professionally." I tried resolving this professionally. "You demanded $620 to release my brother's body." A murmur went through the assembled veterans. Kelly's cameraman zoomed in on Wilson's face. "That's standard procedure for any violation," Wilson insisted, his composure slipping. "We can't make exceptions just because—" "Because what?" Captain Mercer stepped forward. "Because he died serving his country? Because his family wanted to honor his last request to spend one night at home before being laid to rest?" Wilson glanced nervously at the growing crowd. More neighbors had appeared, drawn by the commotion and the news van. "This is private property," he said finally. "I'm going to have to ask all of you to leave before we contact the authorities." I raised my camera higher. "Please do. I'd love to explain to the police and their public affairs department why Whispering Pines HOA thinks a fallen soldier's hearse parked for less than 24 hours warranted towing his body to an impound lot." Patricia whispered something in Wilson's ear. His face flushed red, but he nodded stiffly. Fine. Wait here. He disappeared inside, returning moments later with a clipboard. Sign this release form, and you can collect the vehicle. I examined the form. This still shows a charge of $620. The fee stands, Mr. Reeves. Rules are rules. I looked directly into Kelly's camera. Whispering Pines HOA is charging the family of Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves, killed in action 6 weeks ago, $620 to release his body after they towed his hearse on the morning of his funeral. Wilson snatched the clipboard back. This is becoming absurd. If you want to make a scene, fine, but it won't change anything. The fees are non-negotiable. A new voice cut through the tension. I'll pay it. An elderly man in a Korean War veteran's cap stepped forward from the crowd, his gnarled hands already counting out bills from a worn wallet. And I dare any one of you to try to stop me. One by one, other veterans stepped forward, offering money. Wilson and Patricia exchanged glances, clearly realizing how badly this was playing out on camera. That won't be necessary, Wilson said quickly. Given the unusual circumstances, the board can make a one-time exception. He hastily scratched out the fee section on the form and thrust it back at me. I signed with deliberate slowness, making sure the cameras caught everything. I'll need a receipt, I said. For my records. The drive to the impound lot was a procession in itself. A line of cars, many with American flags fluttering from their windows, followed my vehicle. The news van kept pace. By the time we arrived, the lot attendant was waiting nervously by the gate, the hearse already positioned for a quick departure. I'm really sorry, man, he said quietly as he handed me the keys. If I'd known what was inside. Michael's casket was undisturbed in the back, the flag still perfectly draped over the polished wood. I placed my hand on it briefly. It's okay now, brother, I whispered. We're going home. The funeral proceeded that afternoon, delayed but not diminished. If anything, the morning's events had added a layer of solemnity to the occasion. The story of the HOA's actions had spread rapidly, and the roadside along the procession route was lined with people holding flags and signs honoring Michael's sacrifice. I thought that would be the end of it. A momentary victory over pettiness, a footnote in our family's grief. I was wrong. The next morning, Kelly Oakes called me. Your story's gone national, she said without preamble. Every major network picked it up overnight. Ho Disrespect's hero is trending. The Whispering Pines, HOA's social media accounts have been flooded. I hadn't planned on this level of attention, but I wasn't sorry about it either. Good. Maybe it'll make them think twice before towing another hearse. It's bigger than that, Daniel. People are digging into this HOA's history. Other residents are coming forward with stories. Apparently, your brother's hearse isn't the first outrageous towing incident. Over the next few days, as my family tried to process our grief in the aftermath of the funeral, the story continued to snowball. Former residents shared accounts of excessive fines, selective enforcement of rules, and increasingly bizarre restrictions. One family had been fined for having a basketball hoop visible from the street. Another had their Christmas decorations forcibly removed because they included a nativity scene deemed potentially offensive to non-Christian residents. More disturbing were the financial irregularities that began to surface. A local business reporter discovered that the HOA's management company was owned by Derek Wilson's brother-in-law. The landscaping contract, the single largest expense in the HOA budget, went to a company owned by a shell corporation that traced back to Patricia Keller's husband. 7 days after the towing incident, I received an unexpected visitor at my door. It was Benjamin Chen, a soft-spoken man who introduced himself as a resident of Whispering Pines and a member of the HOA board. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened to your brother, he said, standing awkwardly on my porch. Not all of us on the board were informed about the towing until after it happened. Some of us were horrified by how this was handled. I invited him in. Over coffee, Benjamin revealed that the board was fracturing. 3 members had resigned. In the wake of the scandal, the management company had terminated their contract to distance themselves from the controversy. Most significantly, several homeowners had begun withholding their HOA dues in protest. "There's talk of completely dissolving the current HOA and starting fresh," he said. "Derek and Patricia are fighting it, of course, but there's too much momentum against them now. The financial audits that are coming will be problematic for them." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Benjamin looked down at his coffee cup. "Because you deserve to know the impact your stand has had. And because I served too. Air Force, 8 years. I should have spoken up sooner about how the HOA was being run. A lot of us should have." After he left, I sat on my front porch, watching the American flag my parents had installed in Michael's memory flutter in the evening breeze. The HOA had cited them for that flag the day after they put it up, claiming it exceeded the approved dimensions. Now I noticed at least a dozen similar flags visible on homes throughout the neighborhood. Small rebellions, a community reclaiming itself. 2 weeks later, the county prosecutor announced an investigation into financial mismanagement at the Whispering Pines HOA. Derek Wilson resigned the same day, citing personal reasons. Patricia Keller followed suit shortly after. 3 days later, their real estate office was closed, a "for lease" sign hastily erected in the window. But it wasn't enough. Not for what they'd done to my brother. Not for the final indignity they'd inflicted on a man who had given everything for his country. I waited until the 1-month anniversary of Michael's funeral. The night was clear and cool, perfect for what I had planned. I'd obtained permission from the interim HOA board, now led by Benjamin Chen, for a small memorial installation at the spot where Michael's hearse had been parked that day. What they didn't know was the scale of what I had in mind. The memorial I installed wasn't small. It was a polished granite block, similar to the headstones at Arlington but larger. On one side, it bore Michael's name, rank, and dates of service. On the other side, facing the street where any passing HOA official would see it, were the words, "Here lies your respect." Below that, in smaller letters, "On this spot, Whispering Pines HOA towed the hearse containing the body of Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves on the day of his funeral. May we never forget what happens when rules become more important than humanity." I installed it at 3 a.m. with the help of several veterans who had attended Michael's funeral. We worked silently, efficiently, the skills honed in military service repurposed for this final mission. By dawn, the monument was in place, surrounded by an elegant arrangement of American flags and fresh flowers. It was the lead story on Kelly's morning newscast. By noon, it had gone viral again. Former HOA board members demanded its removal, but there was no HOA left with the authority or will to enforce such an order. The new interim board, sensing the community sentiment, issued a statement that the memorial would remain indefinitely as a reminder of our commitment to compassion over bureaucracy. 3 months later, I received a letter from a national veterans organization. They were establishing a legal defense fund for veterans and military families facing HOA disputes across the country. They were calling it the Michael Reeves Act. Would I be willing to serve as an advisor? I said yes immediately. It wouldn't bring Michael back. Nothing would. But it meant his final act of service hadn't ended when that IED took his life. He was, still protecting others, still fighting against senseless rules that valued conformity over humanity. Yesterday I visited the memorial. Someone had placed fresh flowers beside it. Not family or friends, but ordinary residents of Whispering Pines. One elderly woman approached as I stood there, placed her hand briefly on the granite, and nodded to me before continuing her walk. They had towed my brother's hearse on the day we were meant to lay him to rest. In doing so, they revealed their own moral bankruptcy, their corruption, their fundamental failure to understand what community really means. I hadn't just exposed their misdeeds or contributed to their downfall. I had built something lasting, on the ruins of what they destroyed. A monument not just to Michael, but to decency itself. The HOA that towed a hero had been laid to rest, and from its grave had sprouted something better, something kinder. Sometimes, the most powerful funerals aren't for people. They're for the broken systems we finally find the courage to bury.